Can you comment on the current issue of data centers here in Wisconsin?
One of the important things to consider is Wisconsin's regulatory environment is not the same as every other state's regulatory environment. Ours has been a really strong regulatory environment both from the consumer protection side, but also the fairness to business and utility side. And so it's been a good environment for us. There's a lot of media out there right now on this whole data center space, and a lot of it is talking about cost being passed to core customers. Wisconsin doesn't do that. We actually have a process in place. We have, as Lisa said, individual contracts or tariffs, and tariffs not to be confused with the tariffs that you're hearing about in the news. It's simply the rules and practices in which we charge customers for the service we provide. That process allows the commission to look at every cost we have and make sure it's allocated in the appropriate way to the appropriate customer. And so, as Lisa said, we're growing our system. We're also growing the use of our system to reduce costs for everyone, and the commission is there to assure that that happens.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jeff. I like that a lot. In fact, there's statutory guidelines about no harm to these new customers. We have an obligation to serve, of course, but without harming other customers. And really great point on the system that we've relied on for years in Wisconsin is a cost causer, cost payer principle, and that's what Jeff is really getting at. If you're taking service at the transmission level, your allocation of transmission cost is there, but probably not distribution because you're not taking the benefit of the distribution system, right? So that's a really good way to put it, Jeff.
Do you believe that the consumer community fully understands this moment in time?
So that's a very difficult question, honestly, to answer. I'll give you an example, which is an Iowa example, because we're basically a utility that serves both Wisconsin and Iowa. Cedar Rapids QTS is investing $10 billion, and that was touted by Governor Reynolds as the single largest economic development project in the state's history ever. That's a big deal. And one of the first things that they did was they donated about $18 million to the community to a number of charities. And you think about a community with a population of about 100,000, that's tremendous. And they have committed to be working with the local colleges and tech schools to say, this is the type of expertise, subject matter expertise that we need in the community to work within our campus. So they're really helping to bring that community up. So yes, when there's an open dialogue, there's an understanding, at least at the local level, of what this means from a jobs and property tax standpoint. Your question, Jim, I think is a bigger and broader question. And I think this is where we all need to rely on the regulatory process. It's one that has worked for over 100 years, and it continues to work. And so when you think about just the overall process, when we talk about resource adequacy, we engage stakeholders in the process. It's an open discussion so that we can get their input and they can see and understand and appreciate how we're thinking about things. And then all of that is then submitted to the commission. And again, the commission has an incredible level of subject matter expertise. They ask questions, they solicit public comments and so forth, and then they make the decision because they're charged with that. And it goes back to the utilities to actually build that infrastructure. So think of it as a loop that we continue to do on an ongoing basis for 100 years, and we'll do it for another 100 years. I think it's a process that works very, very well.
I agree with that completely. I think one of the challenges we face is there's so much information out there that people have access to, and that in some cases are bombarding people, and they don't know what to believe, right? So our regulatory environment, as I talked about before, is different than other regulatory environments. The technology for data centers has changed dramatically over the last handful of years, right? So different types of cooling mechanisms and everything else. I think the other thing, again, going back to something else Lisa said, is she used the Rubik's Cube analogy. So we know as leaders of our organization, just like the commission has to face, just like every elected official has to face, when you're making decisions for the whole. You have to solve the whole Rubik's Cube. A lot of our consumer groups, they're able to look at their side of the cube, and that's what they're worried about, right? And so we want to hear from them so we can make sure that we're addressing all sides of that Rubik's Cube. But when we put forth together projects that were going to benefit our customers, we're looking at everything, not just from one side of the cube. When the commission approves a project, they also have to look at everything. So it doesn't mean that voices aren't heard. It means they're heard and they're taken into context with the other voices that are worried about the other positions or the other sides of the Rubik's Cube. And so I think that's a difference that we will always have. It's a natural tension, and I think it's a positive tension, as long as we are transparent and we are listening to what all of the sides are saying so that we can put the Rubik's Cube together in the best way for all.